And this next match coming up, Tempo Storm versus Hands Up. This is going to be a good match to watch.
It really is. I mean, these are great players on both teams. As you can see, Tempo Storm did defeat Method last night, and it was a 2-1. It was a really, really close match. Could have gone to either team. But again, I know a lot of people in the crowd online right now really want to see Tempo Storm and see what they can do this tournament. Of course, Jamili, kind of one of the crowd favorite mages that we've seen from a lot. Doing a great job online constantly. Plays a lot of different classes too, which is great to see. And of course, Peekaboo on Rogue. It's crazy to say that he's probably the best Rogue in the game right now.
He's very good.
And he's such a young player.
Yeah, definitely. And Jamili also just known for playing super, super, super aggressively. So if they do end up going with that Rogue Mage Paladin comp with Elite as the Paladin, that's going to be a very, very scary composition to actually deal with. Their other player is Dota, also goes by Lockgod TKO. He is very, very strong player as well. We've seen him in a lot of GCD matches. So this is a team this is just a really, really scary team to actually be going up against. Of course, they will be going up against Team Hands Up, which is going to be Black Jeff, who has been... He's just an extremely solid Death Knight. The Dark Sims that this guy is able to pull off, the Dark Simulacrum ability, he's able to just copy, just like has some sort of weird ESP that he's able to just sense immediately when now is when I should use Dark Simulacrum so I can steal like an ice block or something like that. He always knows exactly when to use it. It's amazing. They also have on their team, they have Balance, who is a Windwalker Monk actually. So we may end up seeing a little bit of Windwalker Monk in this. They do have Rich Girl as their Holy Paladin. And Beats by Drake, which is one of my favorite names of anybody, playing a Affliction Warlock. Occasionally he has actually been known to play Demo as well. We've actually seen them play Demo and Death Knight in a couple of GCD matches and actually won with it. So...
Yeah, so most often we're probably going to see Black Jeff is going to be in every comp that we will see, I would have to guess. So we're going to see the switch between either a Death Knight and Windwalker or a Death Knight and Warlock. I have seen a little bit of Windwalker Warlock too out of these guys, but not as much as that main comp.
Yep, definitely. So we do have the compositions. Of course, the first map is always going to be Nagrand Arena, but the composition Hands Up will be playing that Frost Death Knight with Black Jeff. They will be playing with an Affliction Warlock as well and that Holy Paladin. And that's the composition that we've seen them win a whole lot with. So we'll be able to see how well they're actually able to pull that off here. Tempo Storm will be playing Holy Paladin, Frost Mage, and Subtlety Rogue. That RM Paladin composition that's just so strong, so difficult to actually deal with. And getting that, I really like Tempo Storm's choice here to go with their strongest comp on Nagrand Arena, because getting that first match is still super important. It means that if you win on Nagrand, then you only have to win on your own map pick after that. If you lose the second match, that's fine. You still get to pick map, and you still get to try a counter comp there. So I definitely really like going with your best foot forward into Nagrand Arena. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see what Elite can do in these matches. He's such an amazing paladin. I'm really glad that he has a chance to shine in one of these tournaments. We didn't see him show up too much in tournaments in the past, but everyone knows who he is. He's just incredible. I'm so glad that we'll be able to see him. We're going to get right into the match very shortly. It is going to be Nagrand Arena, like you said. On the left is going to be Tempo Storm when we get in, and on the right is going to be Hands Up. And like we said, the comps that we were expecting out of both of these teams. We'll take a look at the specs real fast. Looks like Peekaboo pretty standard. And there really isn't anything to note, except for, like I said before, it looks like Elite is going to be playing Holy Prism instead of Execution Sentence, which is something that I have been seeing Paladins adopt since the Execution Sentence nerf.
Yeah, it was adjusted via hotfix very recently for Holy Paladins to do a lot less upfront healing. Previously, it was almost like a lay on hands. It was so powerful. You got that Execution Sentence and just a big burst of healing right away. And now it's still a very strong talent. It does a lot of healing over time, but it's not nearly as front-loaded as it used to be. So I'm actually really curious to see how well this works out for him, going with that Holy Prism. But the gates are just about to open. We will, of course, be following Peekaboo out of the gate here, as getting that opener from the Rogue is going to be so important important here. He actually gets that sap onto Jeff right away, moving around over here. He's going to get the cheap shot onto Beats by Drake, and now the sheep onto the polymorph onto Rich Girl. Beats by Drake already taking a ton of damage into that kidney shot as well. Rich Girl is not able to get any healing onto him. Unfortunately, he was able to port out of there, and he's going to start getting some healing, and Team Hands Up not quite able to, or Team's Hand Up will be fine for just a second.
Yeah, the big thing with that is we saw the smoke bomb come out already. People using a lot of cooldowns early, but they really didn't force anything out of them, minus the wings and execution sentence, which we constantly see happening early in these matchups. So that wasn't too great from Tempo Storm, not what I would have expected from that initial burst, as we do see Jamili taking a little bit of damage right there with Black Jeff on his back. Black Jeff using the dual wield Death Knight setup, so he is going to be able to pump out a lot of damage, but if he's focused, his damage is going to drop a ton. Dark Sim went out. I don't know what he stole quite yet. We might see Elite. Looks like Elite just getting CC'd there too. Jamili tossing out some polys on to Black Jeff, but Rich Girl XO doing a great job of cleansing those off immediately. Beats by Drake taking a lot of damage again. He's definitely going to be the target. Saved by the Light procced as he does port away, but Peekaboo trying to stay on his back as much as he can as we see the orb come out too. Lots of damage coming out on to Beats by Drake right there, trying to get a fear off, and it does land, but it does get cleansed by Elite. We see the deep come out, but no follow-up CC after that. Surprised that Jamili wasn't able to do that. We saw Trinket come out from Jamili also.
Yeah, we can already see the sort of super offensive play that Jamili likes to go for. He actually blinking in to get some damage out there and using that trinket offensively so he can keep up the pressure. And a lot of times that will work out very, very well for him, but now we're seeing him almost we're seeing Hands Up trying to punish him for it by saying, you've already used your trinket, you've been using your blink offensively, you might not be able to blink away when we actually swap over to you. Unfortunately for them, Jamili is still still able to blink out of there, and he does still have both of his ice blocks available. We have not yet seen him. He's actually fairly well known for using his ice blocks offensively to get out of CC. Has not used either of those yet. So Team Hands Up has still got a lot of work cut out for them if they want to get this going.
Yeah, as we see Peekaboo trying to kill the pet there for a second, but stops on it. As we do see the damage coming out onto Beats. He's going to really try to stick to him as we see the Dark Soul come out. There was a great Ro8 immediately to stop that initial set of dots coming out with a cheap shot to follow it. So it looks like they want to try to CC as much as they can of that offensive cooldown. Oh, but we might have a swap coming. Nope, that was just for CC. Peekaboo all over the place in this match. You see him running around. There we go. Now he was going to preemptively run to the port, it looked like. But he was able to get right back onto him, so that's good. Peekaboo getting feared off. No cleanse quite yet out of that. There we go. So we do see Elite just keeping his rogue out of CC. Grip, and followed by a stun onto Elite right there. Looks like they might be swapping onto Elite as Jeff is dealing a lot of damage, but no cooldowns up, so he did get Elite down to half, forcing the wings out right there, as Elite looks like he wants to try to keep Jamili offensive, as Jamili is playing deep into the backfield with that Death Knight on his back.
Yeah, and of course Jamili, mages in this season just able to take a lot more damage than you might expect through that Flame Glow talent. It's such a good talent to be able to stay alive and just keep in there, even with Black Jeff punching him this entire time. Beats by Drake taking a little bit of damage at the moment, does actually get that Saved by the Light to proc. And he's actually used his frenzied dark regeneration as well. So he's going to be healed back up and just fine. As Rich Girl was actually forced to use his wings and his execution sentence as well. So that's now a lot of cooldowns come out for Hands Up. They're going to be fine for the moment, but if Tempo Storm can keep up the pressure here, that's going to be way too much for them to be able to deal with as this fight continues. Peekaboo actually using his cloak offensively there as well, just trying his best to keep up. Actually shadow stepping over to Rich Girl there for just a second, just to get himself out of a little bit of trouble there for just a second. Now just continuing so much damage onto Beats by Drake, but Rich Girl, without being caught into CC, is able to heal through it no problem.
Now the big thing to note, they are using their grip onto Elite every time it's up to follow up with a stun after that. So that's going to be their attempt to kill Elite, as it looks like Elite's doing a great job of judging that, okay, I only have to keep myself full health every time a grip is up, so I have enough time in between to kind of keep my team offensive. But we do see a dance coming out onto Peekaboo. He's going to get rooted off, but that is going to be in range of Beats by Drake. Excellent job with the stun on top, as we do see the port. That Shadow Dance is going to fade off of Peekaboo, but again, another Saved by the Light proc. They just really have to stay offensive and try to set up some burst in between the Saved by the Light active, because that's the thing that is going to absolutely protect this Warlock.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, we saw the Hand of Freedom coming out onto him, which was immediately stolen by Jamili. He's just doing a great job of spell stealing constantly through this entire match. Beats by Drake once again getting into a little bit of trouble here. There's no defensive cooldowns available for him just yet. If they can keep up this pressure, he'll be in trouble. Now the wings are just now coming available for Rich Girl, and he's going to have to go ahead and use those right away. And Beats by Drake and Rich Girl both doing an amazing job with their positioning, sort of rallying behind this pillar over here right away, able to completely diffuse that attack from Tempo Storm, and now trying to turn it back around onto Jamili. He does still have both ice blocks available, and it looks like that Save by the Light did just proc as well, so they did manage to get him a little bit low there for just a second, but he should not feel too concerned just yet. Of course, the big question is, if he ice blocks, is Black Jeff just going to steal it and use it against him?
Yep, and that's something that we've seen out of Black Jeff in tournaments so far, just doing a great job with those Dark Sims. Jamili kind of struggling to stay on his target and get CC out, but doing a great job of faking there for a second and landing a full CC. As we do see immediately, he knows it was going to be cleansed. Oh, but it does look like Rich Girl is playing the double cleanse glyph, so he's going to have a little bit longer cooldown, but 2 charges of it, and it played a perfect role right there with Jamili being able to CC Jeff twice and immediately cleansed out.
Yes, definitely he does, as you said, have that Glyph of Cleanse slotted, which is a it's actually a really, really interesting choice going up against this composition. I really like that choice. But now we're seeing Jamili starting to take a little bit of damage here, and Peekaboo as well. Hands up looking like they're not quite sure who they want to go on just yet, but they did manage to actually get the Avenging Wrath out of Elite. So even though there wasn't really a ton of focus pressure, they did manage to get that cooldown used. And now Beats by Drake, though, in a lot of trouble here, actually getting that Blessing of Protection. Jamili trying desperately to steal it off of him, but there's enough other buffs on Beats by Drake that he just was not able to actually steal that.
And that shut down the Shadow Dance by Peekaboo right there. Plus, it really shut down the Icy Veins from Jamili too. So those were 2 important cooldowns used. So they're going to have to wait until those are back up to really set up the burst again. We see a Kidney Shot on to Black Jeff to stop a little bit of damage. Looks like they're going to try to kill the pet. There we go. They have a pet kill. Immediately resummoned, it looks like, by Beats by Drake. Actually, I don't see it out quite yet. Again, another portal. Beats by Drake doing a great job of knowing when he has the portal cooldown and just deciding to stay extremely offensive in the face of Peekaboo. And again, like we were saying earlier, Rich Girl EXO is always there waiting for the port.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a Smoke Bomb now coming out, trying to put some damage into Beats by Drake here. Rich Girl is not able to get in there and get the healing going off, and now into a full blind as well. Going to go ahead and Trinket that, immediately put into that Frost Jaw, but he's going to go ahead and Aura Mastery his way out of that. Now into the Polymorph as well. Beats by Drake could be in some trouble here, as there's a lot of damage coming out, and Rich Girl does not have any way to... No, excuse me, his bubble just came off a cooldown, I believe, and he was able to use that and be able to break back out of that. Now Elite into a full Fist of Justice, though. Elite could be in a lot of trouble. Black Jeff doing so much damage, and that's going to force the Divine Shield out of Elite as well. So a bubble for a bubble in this trade so far. Very well played by Hands Up.
It was. That was an important cooldown to get out of Elite because the wings were already up, as he is going to still try to stay offensive. Elite really wants to keep Jamili on his target, even though Black Jeff is going to be hitting him non-stop. Elite, oh, there we go. Now we have the grip, but we didn't see the follow-up stun like we did every other time. But Jamili down to half right now. Was not able to get the second polymorph off, it looks like.
Yep, and now Elite's cooldowns are all no longer active. He does have 1 Blessing of Protection available, I believe. 1 Hand of Protection available. Jamili still taking a lot of damage, still has both of his ice blocks as well, so I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this choice to continue focusing on him. They may need to go after Peekaboo before too much longer here, or at least maybe continue sticking onto Elite. We'll have to see what choices they end up making here. We are getting fairly deep into dampening now, 25% reduced healing from everybody. Rich Girl having to use his Avenging Wrath to be able to keep his team members alive. The Execution Sentence coming out, and actually was spell stolen by Jamili there, I believe. Jamili's still taking a lot of damage. Elite now into that Fist of Justice as well, not able to get the healing. And Tempo Storm, all 3 of their members are getting very, very low on health. Elite down to 30%, Peekaboo down to 30%, Jamili down to 30% as well. Saved by the Light has already procced. I don't know that they're actually going to be able to keep alive through all of this damage. What can Elite do now? 28% into dampening. He's getting so far behind in the healing, and Team Hands Up is completely full on health. Now the Avenging Wrath comes out. He gets put into that Strangulate for just a second. He's going to use his Aura Mastery to get out of that right away. But still, he's just getting so far behind on his healing. I don't know how long he can keep this up.
Jamili pushes in with that blink and the with the cooldowns active. There we go. Now we see a great job trying to CC Jeff, but Jeff able to AMS to answer that. Jamili down to half right now. We see Peekaboo trying to do damage, but look at the health bars of Hands Up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hands Up is completely full on health. Jamili still has not had to ice block this entire game, and I know I keep harping on about that, but I think that's very, very important because Tempo Storm has been having to deal with so much damage onto him through this whole match. Now dipping down to 50% health. The Shadow Fury comes out. Elite did get trapped there for just, or excuse me, Chains of Ice there for just a second, as well as that Shadow Fury coming out. Now they're trying to turn it around onto Elite. He's down to 30% health, 20% health. He could be in a little bit of trouble here. He's trying to get a couple of casts off here. Does manage to get a Holy Light off. Now actually having to use his bubble once again as well. And between that bubble and one Blessing of Protection, that's all that he has available at this point in terms of defensive cooldowns for himself. But again, Hands Up is just continuing on Jamili, and at this point, honestly, why not? Like, why not keep going after Jamili? They are in just a great position. It almost doesn't matter who they're really focusing on. Jamili, though, getting super low, down to 20% health. He is going to have to use his first ice block of the game. He will still have another one available, but he will be in hypothermia for the next, I believe it's 30 seconds is that debuff, and it's going to be very, very difficult to keep him alive through all of this. Elite is going to use his Avenging Wrath that has just become available, trying to do his best to keep Jamili alive during this very, very sensitive moment as that hypothermia is still active for a few more seconds. The Fist of Justice comes out onto Elite, but he's going to be able to live through that just fine. And now the Blessing of Protection onto Jamili is going to slow down Black Jeff, but Beats by Drake is still pumping a ton of damage into Jamili right now. Elite with that Avenging Wrath just about to fall off as well, but he's still able to keep him alive, and now hypothermia has fallen off of Jamili, and he will have his second ice block available if he needs it.
Now it looks like Pika really is trying to put that damage onto Beats by Drake. Looks like his Shadow Dance is going to come up any second now as, you know, spamming that Fan of Knives to try to get a lot of combo points. They've been doing a great job of killing the pets, but here we go. Now we see that Dark Soul coming out yet again from Beats by Drake. Let's see the spread pressure coming out because we are 43% into dampening at this point. Elite still at 42,000 mana, and it was really that onslaught before that drained his mana. Saved by the Light proccing on himself when he was all the way across the map, which gave him a little bit of breathing room, but with all that dampening, it wasn't that great. The damage onto Beats by Drake forces the bubble out of Rich Girl XO, which is a very important setup, but look at this. Jamili with Save by the Light proccing and having to use his second block, choosing to go immediately offensive out of that block, even though his health wasn't picked up as he gets gripped a little bit behind the pillar with the AMS onto Black Jeff so he can't CC. Jamili at no health right now, 4,000 health, as Elite wasn't able to save him at that point. Wow, what an exciting match. 47% into dampening.
Yeah, that was absolutely crazy, and you could just see the crazy amount of spread pressure that Hands Up was able to do between that Death Knight and the Affliction Warlock. It's just so much damage to deal with that eventually they will win. The longer these matches go, eventually Team Hands Up will win, and that's exactly what we saw there. It got too far into dampening, and Elite was just not able to keep that healing up any longer, and that's it. Jamili goes down.
I think they were doing a great job of spreading out where Jamili and Peekaboo were the entire time. I thought every single Shadow Dance that came out, I didn't see Jamili in there on top of Beats by Drake, spreading out that pressure. He really was trying to get the CC onto Rich Girl XO, but Black Jeff was just constantly interrupting that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that spread pressure, I think, did a great job. It split them up. They weren't able to connect together to do a lot of damage. Jamili really was spending a lot of his time CCing Black Jeff or being harassed by Black Jeff. Elite doing a great job. However, you know, can't say too much about him during that match. You know, he really tried to make those plays happen with his team, pushed in, you know, chose, okay, I'm going to sacrifice this bubble to keep my team offensive, which almost paid off. There was a couple times they got Beats by Drake really low, but they were just playing it by the book. Beats by Drake, you know, making sure he stays offensive when his port cooldown is up and letting Rich Girl XO know, you know, exactly where his port is. Stand near this port, I can port back, you know, you can hit me with a small heal once I get there.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I think was really super important, and perhaps for people that aren't familiar with watching competitive arenas like this, is just how well each trade was going for each team in terms of cooldowns. Cooldown trading is an absolutely super important skill for these top-level arenas, and I believe we actually do have a video available that we can throw to talk about that cooldown management. If we can pull that up here just a second, as we do have a very short delay. Tempo Storm is working out some issues issues, I believe. They're actually probably talking a little bit about which composition they want to play and so on. But yeah, we do have a video available. We're going to go ahead and play that real quick and talk a little bit about cooldown management.
Abilities with long cooldowns between each use are powerful in arenas. Lining up offensive cooldowns can lead to a large burst of damage on an enemy, to score a kill, or force them to use defensive cooldowns. For that reason, the strategic use of defensive cooldowns can often be the deciding factor in a match. If the player uses too many defensive abilities too early, they'll leave themselves vulnerable to heavy burst damage afterward. If they don't use enough, they could die before their team has a chance to save them. Keeping track of the timers on cooldowns and taking note of which tools the opposing team has used is a skill you'll see regularly from the best players in the arena. For more examples of team compositions and strategies, visit worldofwarcraft.com and navigate over to the arena forums.
And welcome back. There we have it. That's just a little bit of a... Obviously, this sort of cooldown management thing is something that really becomes second nature the more familiar you get with arenas. But for anyone who is following along going, okay, this was a really, really long match. Nobody died for the whole match. This is why these matches are exciting, because as time keeps going, there's all those little moments where just the tiniest little thing happens and one team ends up essentially up against the ropes because they don't have cooldowns available for quite some time. It's just really, really important to understand that at the highest level of arena.
Yeah, no, we are waiting for Tempo Storm to choose who is going to be playing in the next matchup, because they do have, of course, Dota available to swap in as their Warlock, and he's an amazing Warlock, so they can run so many different comps. I don't know, I didn't think they played as well as I thought they would have in this first round, just, in terms of the coordinated CC, the coordinated damage. I think that the disruption from Black Chef just really taking a toll on the team.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those situations, I think, where you have these really, really solid players who know how everything needs to go, and it's sort of like, okay, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and then we win. And when you've played a ton of matches that way, and eventually you can hit a team that sort of messes with that a little bit and sort of disrupts your flow a bit. We know that these guys are extremely strong players. Tempo Storm, they actually knocked out Method. This was the team that actually beat Method, that Sea-Doo and Venruki and Azael team earlier on. So it's definitely very, very, very good players. And so we can definitely see maybe just a little bit knocked off kilter in that first map. However, they do now have their map pick, which we now know will be Tolvaron Arena.
I think I like this better than Nagrand for this team. We did have a comp swap also, it looks like. So it looks like Team Stand Up will be playing what they did last round. Solid choice. They did an amazing job. There were a couple scary moments towards the beginning with the damage on the Warlock, but I think they caught their pace. And then the cooldown management was just a lot better out of Team's Hands Up. So they will be playing that Affliction Warlock, the Holy Paladin, and the Frost Death Knight yet again. Yep. And Tempo Storm is going to swap in Dota for Pika. So we are going to be having Elite on the Holy Paladin. We're going to have Dota playing the Affliction Warlock, and of course Jamili on Frost Mage. It's going to be an exciting match. Yep. So we'll let those teams talk it out a bit to get the strats, because now that they have Dota in, they need to figure out what they're going to do to answer what Team's Hands Up did. Because I like, the beginning of the match, if I had to freeze it, a couple minutes in, I probably would have guessed that Team Tempo Storm would have pulled it out, especially with all that damage by Pika at the start. But everything after that first 3 minutes was just completely in Team Hands Up's favor.
Yeah, definitely. With that comp swap, actually, switching to that Frost Mage and Affliction Warlock, we will be seeing Dota coming in for that. I think that makes this map choice make a whole lot more sense too, because with those big pillars, it can be a little frustrating for rogues sometimes. There's actually a huge gap between the pillars even on Tolvaron. It's basically Nagrand, but scale everything way up, and that makes it very, very difficult for rogues sometimes. But I do really, really like this composition, this Mage Lock Paladin composition. We actually saw a match playing with that earlier. It's just extremely strong right now. I think this is a very, very good choice for them going into this. So let's actually talk a little bit about Team Hands Up. One thing that a lot of people may not know about this team is that they were actually the team that knocked out the three amigos during last year's qualifiers, which was Sea-Doo, Venruki, and Chanimal, I believe, was what that team was during last year's qualifiers. And that's interesting because Tempo Storm just knocked out Method, which is Sea-Doo, Venruki, and Azael. which is a very similar team. Azael and Chanimal, both very, very strong Warlocks. So I think it's actually really, really interesting that both of these teams have knocked out basically the same team in previous years.
Yeah, so you know, that's why it's exciting towards the end of these tournaments when you have these great teams facing off against each other that have history against each other. You know, and you know, forcing the kills onto Method last night. You know, let these guys show up and. They have to play against Hands Up, however, and they know they're good. Like, they know that even though they make it past the first round into the round of 8, you know, it's not a breeze after defeating, you know, crowd favorites like Method. They still have to fight their way to that first place.
Definitely. So we will be getting into this match. It is up, and we are going to be seeing Game 2 here between Tempo Storm and Hands Up. Tempo Storm, of course, down 0-1. They need to win this match and the next match. An interesting thing, once again, Elite actually using that Holy Prism instead of the Execution Sentence. I don't know that it made a huge difference for them last match.
Some break a polymorph with it. That definitely made a difference onto Black Jeff. Actually, one of the things we didn't even talk about last time is Team Hands Up is playing as Horde right now. The reason why is because Beats by Drake playing that Affliction Warlock, that Rachel Berserking, makes a gigantic difference during the cooldowns.
Yeah, and of course there have been actually several changes since patch 6.2 that have actually diminished the effectiveness of the human Racial by quite a bit. Of course, the on-use trinkets were lowered in effectiveness with the patch, and then very recently the medallion trinkets got actually a pretty substantial buff. It's actually like a little over 1,000 versatility from the medallion trinket once you're actually in a PvP situation. So it's actually really, really interesting to see somebody saying, you know what, we're going to go Horde now. We're going to see how well we can do as Horde. And so far, so good. They're already up 1-0 in this match, and Elite actually taking a ton of damage right now from Black Jeff, just beating the crap out of him. He's going to have to go ahead and use that Hand of Freedom and try to get away. And he's actually, Rich Girl, though, on the other side of the map here, has had to use his Avenging Wrath and his Execution Sentence already.
As Black Jeff is going to get cleansed out of those Sheeps just constantly. Jamili doing a great job of knowing when that AMS is down so that he can poly, but Rich Girl just over and over cleansing that out. Elite taking a lot of damage from Black Jeff, gets feared off by Dodo or Lock God TKO, but you see that this is Elite doing a great job of running away just at that moment that Black Jeff knows he can no longer harass. But Beats by Drake taking a bunch of damage in the backfield again. Both Jamili and Dodo loading him up with damage as Dodo getting good spread pressure on the dots. However, looks like Rich Girl just doing an amazing job of CCing off of him.
Yeah, definitely. Beats by Drake still taking a little bit of pressure here and actually into that Fist of Justice. He's going to immediately trinket that Fist of Justice, gets caught into the Shadow Fury. Going to have to use his Dark Regen as well. And the Save by the Light is going to proc. Beats by Drake actually getting into quite a bit of trouble here as Rich Girl is caught into a full fear. This could spell trouble for them. He's going to have to move over here, get in line of sight of his healer. Very good situational awareness to recognize that he needed to get around that corner. And now they're able to turn it around onto Lock God TKO. He is caught into the Shadow Fury. Elite caught into a full Fist of Justice. Elite's going to sit this whole thing, not using his trinket until the very last second there, and actually he was able to use Stone Form to break out of that Strangulate and be able to keep up the healing as much as possible. Lock God, though, still sitting down at 30% health just now with that Dark Regeneration coming up. Is he going to start getting some healing? Elite just has not been able to really pump too much healing into him, and now they're actually turning it over onto Jamili and putting a little bit of damage into him as well as his Water Elemental's just fallen.
Yeah, these swaps are really smart. As they do, they're going to push in on Elite again. There we go. We have a stun on to Elite, and he is going to use Divine Protection right there, but it's still a lot of damage. Wings having to come out also, and look at the health of the team of Tempo Storm. All 3 targets have been swapped onto over and over by Black Jeff, and he just realizes that this is the opportune moment to switch. Black Jeff getting feared off on his pillar, so that is going to stop a little bit of that cooldown from being active. 3 seconds left on it. Let's see if he can make anything happen. Choosing to play a little bit defensive because his Paladin is a bit away from him.
Yeah, that Pillar of Frost is only a 1-minute cooldown, so it's not too bad to end up wasting it. You know, that especially since he's going to try to line it up with the Dark Soul from Beats by Drake. It's going to give him a little bit more opportunity to say, you know what, this one didn't go so well. We're going to pull back. We're going to try this again in another. Now 20 seconds is when his Pillar of Frost is going to come up again. Elite just still taking so much damage, though, having to constantly be running over here and trying to keep himself alive through all of this ridiculous amount of spread pressure that Team Hands Up is able to do. Like, if you look at the debuffs on the left side of the screen, that is a full row of dots from both the Death Knight and the Warlock on every member of Tempo Storm. I guess Jamili's actually have fallen off at this point, but it's just so much spread pressure for Elite to constantly have to deal with. Now Jamili, though, using the Icy Veins, they're going to try to put some damage into Beats by Drake here. He is caught a little bit out in the open, but he is, I believe, within range of his demonic circle, so if he needs to get out of line of sight in a hurry, he can do that. Very good positioning by Beats by Drake, and Rich Girl actually be able to stay over there behind him. Black Jeff actually getting the execution sentence there as he was starting to take a little bit of damage, but the entire team of Hands Up is just looking so strong in the face of Tempo Storm, all of whom are sitting at around the 60% health mark right now.
They are, and this is completely hands-up match to win so far, as Elite is caught in that stun again. However, Dota is going to be pumping out that damage with their cooldowns. Aura Mastery comes up from Elite, trying to save his other cooldowns, because Wings was just used also. Let's see if Dota can put out some damage, also known as Lock God TKO, as he's trying to get dots up, but it doesn't look like he got any at all. Maybe 1 or 2 UAs up as the corruptions are being dispelled off, and that 10 stack of Agony is going to fall off of Beats by Drake too, so that was a absolutely terrible usage of that cooldown. He was just CC'd off, having to come back and help Elite out. But look at this, damage onto Black Jeff pretty good, as we do see that pillar come out yet again, as he is going to try to stay onto Dota. We see that second Dark Soul come out too by Dota, using them back to back to try to keep the pressure up. Black Jeff down to half and choosing to use that AMS. So looks like they're slightly getting damage on him. There we go. There's the damage that we need to see. Beats by Drake, but then again, like I said before, Rich Girl is standing right next to the port, ready every time that Beats by Drake needs to play defensive.
Yep, and I actually really liked that AMS usage from Black Jeff. He actually managed to steal Dark Soul as well. There's some of that Dark Sim ability that it was just really, really cool. But I really liked that AMS a second ago. He's actually pumping a ton of damage into Elite here. Elite's going to have to use that port to get out of there, but doesn't get out in time to stop the Save by the Light from proccing, so he will not have that available in a second. But yeah, that AMS that Black Jeff used, he actually used it when the Frost Orb came out, and I don't think it was because he felt like he was in a lot of danger. I think he was just using that to get a whole bunch of runic power and be able to dump a whole bunch of Frost Strikes. And with that dual wield setup, Frost Strikes do so much damage from a Frost Death Knight right now. So really, really loving this aggressive play coming out of Hands Up, as they're able to just constantly keep Tempo Storm and Elite having to use cooldowns nonstop. He's now actually had to use his Avenging Wrath as well. He does have the rest of his cooldowns available for the time being, but I gotta say, I think it's only a matter of time before those cooldowns are gonna have to be used again.
So you can see Elite changing his playstyle a little bit and choosing to play a little bit more into the backfield, almost out of grip range, because that's how they're setting up. If they do want to go for that grip, it means that Rich Girl is going to have to go way out into the middle, and then we saw the CC chain start on him. So it looks like Hands Up playing a little bit more defensive in the response of how Elite is playing.
Yeah, definitely. Both teams now starting to go, okay, you know what? We're not going to win this match in the 12% dampening range, so we need to sort of hang back a little bit. And as dampening gets higher, basically whichever team ends up in the stronger position going into the, I want to say about the 25% dampening mark, is probably about where we'll start to see some real kills start happening here, a real dangerous moments actually start happening. Black Jeff, once again, just staying out here in the open as much as possible and getting a ton of healing in the process, and actually dumping a bunch of damage into Elite. Elite's going to go ahead and stone form off that Strangulate, but still taking a lot of damage and just having to use his his Hand of Freedom as well, just to get away from Black Jeff, who's just constantly putting out so much pressure.
Now the Hand of Sacrifice doing a lot of damage to Elite, but it did keep Lockod able to stay offensive. But look at the damage onto everyone. Elite getting gripped in again, and this is where they're gonna, this is how they can probably turn it around. But Fist of Justice onto Elite right now, using that Divine Protection to stop a little bit of the damage. Black Jeff getting a bit low, but he can always rely on that AMS to keep him safe from these casters. But look at how offensive Black Jeff is going right now. Wings up, and Elite is only gonna use that cooldown so far, so that is a great trade right there.
Yeah, definitely. Tempo Storm looks like they're trying to claw their way back into this. Lock God actually taking a little bit of damage there. Just the constant pressure. It almost doesn't matter for Hands Up who they're really attacking, as long as they're able to keep attacking somebody, because it's just so much damage. Now sinking a little bit of damage into Jamili, and that's just more that Elite has to try and heal through. He has been using that Holy Prism, and I think it's actually really starting to work out well for him in this situation, because it does heal the entire team when he uses it. And it's on a relatively short cooldown as well. But now Jamili possibly in some trouble here, dipping down to 30% health. We may see him have to use his first block coming out of this, but Lockgod with that Dark Soul active, he's going to have to port out of there, going to have to waste a little bit of that Dark Soul time. as he's going to have to start playing a little bit more defensively and actually using his Dark Regeneration as well. Just trying to stay alive, Tempo Storm, as long as possible here as we're starting to reach that 25% dampening mark.
So here we go. This is the first cooldown trait that we've seen out of Hands Up. That Saved by the Light proc is the first one. However, it looks like Rich Girl has so many things available, but lots of damage coming out with a Fear onto Rich Girl. That Execution Sentence was able to land first. Shadow Fury on top of it. Let's see if they can continue this CC chain. Doesn't look like it. Aura Mastery comes out at that point, as we do see some heals coming out as Beats by Drake is back up to full. Elite in the middle right now with a Strangulate on top of it. Saved by the Light procs trying to get out of there, as used the gate also, but there we go. Now he's forced to use those wings. He really has to pick his team up, because if you look at the health difference at this point, Black Jeff just sticking onto his target and doing so much damage during this match. Again, with all those awesome swaps onto Elite, forcing out. There we go. Now we have another grip in, as we do see a Sheep onto Black Jeff and that Blood Elf Racial using that quick silence. We still have a while. Oh, and it looks like he misses his interrupt as he does run away from Elite, knowing that he isn't going to be able to do much for the heals. And Jamili stealing a... Or actually, it looks like that sack went up on Jamili, stopping a bit of damage. Beats by Drake taking little damage. It looks like Saved by the Light just did proc a minute ago, which also forced the wings out of Rich Girl. So it looks like Tempo Storm is catching a couple breaks in this match, but we do have a bubble out of Elite, and Elite's going to be able to just pump healing into his team. Look at how offensive Jamili is playing, though.
Yeah, definitely. Tempo Storm, actually, this could work out poorly for him. He's going to have to use Blazing Speed to try to get back over to his healer there. Elite going to get Grip back in again, get that Strangulate, which right away, once again, he's going to use Stone Form to get rid of that Strangulate, and actually this Hand of Freedom as well, so he can just sort of run back over here behind this pillar. This is where Elite lives now, is behind this pillar over here. He wants to hang out here as long as possible, just be able to pump healing as much as he can, and every time he does, Hands Up has to push out a little bit towards him, and I think that's really the best chance that Tempo Storm has, is to try to get Black Jeff out of position, get him away from the rest of his team. But fortunately for Hands Up, Black Jeff is much smarter than that, and every single time he starts to get a little bit out of position, he says, you know what, we're going to win this game eventually. The longer this goes, eventually we will win. Yep. So I'm just going to walk away right now, once again, just walking back over and saying, you know what, I'll just hang out over here for a second. I don't care what you're doing.
And it kind of looks like Team Tempo Storm is almost mirroring that. Every time that either Lockgod or Jamili gets focused by Black Jeff, they are pulling back, and the other caster on the enemy team is going forward. Double Trinket coming out of Jamili and Lockgod, because they are going offensive with Lockgod's cooldowns, as it looks like Jamili is getting a bit low right there, but he does have a block available, and Cold Snap is coming back up very shortly, and that might be why they're choosing to stay so offensive. It looks like that... Oh, wow. Beats by Drake taking a ton of damage right there, as Saved by the Light does proc with forcing the bubble also, so that's a couple cooldowns coming out. Rich Girl's Trinket is coming back up, but again, Jamili's health just so low. No CC only. Actually, there we go. A grip onto Elite, followed by the Fist with an immediate Trinket coming out of Elite. On the Shadow Form also, as Elite is going to gate away to safety, Black Jeff is going to have to try to stick to the targets that he can make it to. A silence on top of that too. Elite sitting a bit low, knowing that that grip isn't available, healing his teammates instead, but Jamili just taking a bunch of damage, as it looks like that Cold Snap was used, so he has one block left.
Yeah, he actually blocked and immediately canceled it in the middle of that. Is a play that Jamili is very well known for, using his ice blocks offensively. And it almost actually came around to bite him as soon as Hands Up sort of realized that. They swapped over to him, but fortunately his hypothermia has fallen off, so he is able to use that second block again if he needs it. Now Lockgod and Elite both popping cooldowns, Elite having to use his Avenging Wrath, and Lockgod using his Dark Soul, trying to just keep as much damage going as possible. But Hands Up is just, they're in such a comfortable position right now. Black Jeff taking a little bit of damage, but he's just going to go ahead and, actually gets rooted out of there, and does actually end up getting that Execution Sentence immediately stolen by Jamili there, I believe. I'm not actually sure where that went. It just was gone right away the second it showed up. Jamili, though, taking a lot of damage, may end up having to block here down to 40% health. Nope, he's just going to go ahead and get away for just a second. And Team Hands Up, once again, just trying to stay out of line of sight, stay defensive. Every time they start taking a little bit of damage, they just back off because they know this game is theirs to lose.
Yeah, and I like this this switch of strategy by Tempo Storm. It looks like Jamili is going to try to get his pet, but he did get his pet back out. That's good. As looks like he is going to push in with a blazing speed, but Rich Girl doing a great job of even being on the back corner of the pillar. Oh, actually, he does get the polymorph off, but immediately you see Beats by Drake getting out of there. We see the Icy Veins is going to have 10 seconds left on it, trying to make something happen with it, just casting those frost bolts directly into him. Following up with that poly CC, there goes the third poly onto it, but Jamili gets feared away. Frostjaw on to Rich Girl, so that's one more CC. There we go. Now Elite is pushing way in. They are gambling on this kill so much with their healer having to bubble there too. Dark Soul comes out onto Beats by Drake with a Shadow Fury on top too, but I think that's it for CC. I don't think they were able to score a kill by Beats by Drake, and it put Tempo Storm in a very, very offensive position.
Yeah, and Beats by Drake actually playing very intelligently with his defensive cooldowns. He does still have his Unending Resolve available. He may have to use that here very, very shortly, though. He's been under a lot of pressure for quite some time and been able to hold on to those defensives for so long, and it's looking like it's starting to work out for them. Jamili having to Ice Block yet again, canceling his Ice Block right away. He does get that Blessing of Protection, which is going to help keep him alive. Black Jeff and Beats Drake so low, stuck out of line of sight over here, and Beats by Drake goes down.
But so does Jamili. Lock on, now we have a 2-on-2 situation. Jamili really blinking in to score that kill. He really risked it. We saw that block with the cancel to try to CC the enemy team, and now all Black Jeff is going to do is chase Elite around after this point. He's going to have to try to get away from him, and it looks like, yep, he's just going to follow him through that gate. He's going to get Shadow Furied out right there. Black Jeff is playing Death Siphon too, so he has a lot of self-maintenance with the healing. So as even when Rich Girl is CC'd, but 62% into dampening, is this something that they're going to be able to come back from? Oh, it looks like he did steal the fear and feared Lockgod TKO away just for a minute, but look at this. Black Jeff just running around in circles. So he gets feared away for a second, but back onto Elite. Lots of damage coming out onto him. Divine Protection coming out also, but we're not seeing a ton of damage coming out onto Rich Girl. Wings coming out from Elite also, so there's a lot of cooldowns used because this is so deep in dampening that AMS gets chewed through almost instantly.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not actually sure what to call this one. I think this is actually sort of a deep breath for Elite at this point, because that constant pressure from Beats by Drake is no longer something that he has to deal with, making the healing much easier. Of course, Black Jeff is able to keep his dot spread as well, but they're just not quite as scary as Beats by Drake's. However, Black Jeff actually trinketing there, trying to keep up the offensive pressure, immediately put back into this Fist of Justice. Black Jeff could be in some trouble here. Now down to 40% health. He's going to actually come around over here and use the Pillar of Frost, trying to chase after Lockgod and start putting some damage into him. Lockgod is going to be able to immediately port out of there, and now Rich Girl and Black Jeff have to come over here behind this pillar to try and be able to top back off again. Black Jeff just having to play a lot more defensively than he really wants to in this situation, and honestly, I think that Tempo Storm has this. I don't know that there's much that Black Jeff and Rich Girl can really do to keep up this pressure. They need to be able to just survive until a point where Elite can no longer do basically any healing at all. Black Jeff, though, so low. Using that AMS, it's going to be chewed through very, very quickly here. Rich Girl does have the Avenging Wrath active at 35% health. Black Jeff at 32% health. The bubble comes out from Rich Girl. Black Jeff actually having to pull back over here. Oh, and he actually grips Lockgod over, but immediately gets feared away. Gonna have to run back over here again and try to keep this up. But I just don't know how much longer that Team Hands Up, Rich Girl, and Black Jeff can actually stay alive now at this point.
The wings come back up by Elite, just pumping out those heals because we are 73% into dampening. Black Jeff down to 100,000 health as trying to get some CC out, but not able to land any as Elite is looking great right now with those heals. Both Rich Girl and Black Jeff getting so low. Pillar comes back up. However, Black Jeff using it. That AMS is chewed through again almost instantly. So much damage. Rich Girl healing on fumes at this point. 76% into dampening, and look at the health of Tempo Storm at this point. This is almost the end for Team Hands Up. Lockgod gets another pet out as both Black Jeff and Rich Girl. No mana on Rich Girl at this point. This is all self-maintenance by Black Jeff, using Death Siphon as many times as he can, but it is not looking good whatsoever as Black Jeff is down to 25,000 health, with Rich Girl also down to 11,000 as both die almost at the exact same moment. What a match.
Oh, man.
Wow.
I need a cigarette after that match. That was insane.
You know what? We talk about Jamili canceling blocks, staying offensive, but he pulled it out for that team. Even though he died at the end, his team absolutely needed to do it at that exact moment. or they wouldn't have been able to score the kill. I think the gamble paid off. I think it was a smart play.
Yeah, definitely. He was able to kill Beats by Drake, or at least contribute to the kill on Beats by Drake, and that was just so important because, like you said, even though he died afterwards, that put it as Elite and Lock God, the Affliction Warlock and the Holy Paladin, up against Black Jeff and Rich Girl, the Frost Death Knight and the Holy Paladin. And in that situation, just being able to damage from range and stay behind those pillars and force Black Jeff to actually be super aggressive in those situations. He doesn't want to have to be constantly chasing after people. He wants to be able to pull back to his team and get healed up and then go back out again, and he just can't do that in that situation. So that was an amazing match. That is one of the best matches I think I've ever seen. This is a really, I'm really happy right now.
Yeah, and that makes it 1-1 right now. We're going to have to see what these teams are going to pick. And like I said before, one of the ways that you can tell amazing players is that they will adapt their strategy mid-game to match the enemy teams. We saw Black Jeff just harassing constantly in the center, and so they started ping-ponging back and forth when Jamili and when Dota would go up, or knowing that they had to stand in a position so Elite doesn't get gripped in and focused. And it really was almost an entire shift on who was successful during that match. At the start, I totally would have given it to Hands Up. I thought that they were just outplaying them from the start. I think that their strat was perfect. But then watching Team Tempo Storm adjust to that, it was great.
Yeah, definitely. It is worth noting, though, that was Tempo Storm's map pick. So this time around, it's going to be Team Hands Up that's able to pick the map. And then once they find out what their opponent's comp is, they will be able to potentially make any comp adjustments that they want to as well. So the ball is now back in Hands Up's court, I think. It's now that they're going to be able to sort of go into this next match on their terms, because they did win that first match on the Grand Arena, which is a very important match to actually win in these best-of-3 series. So we're going to find out here very shortly exactly what team compositions we're going to have and what map as well.
Yeah, all right, let's see what they pick. They do have some time to discuss it because that was such a close match. I mean, after that first match, I was expecting, about the same from both teams, but seeing Tempo Storm, change it up a little bit, throwing Dota in there, Dota doing a great job. I saw a lot of great CCs just barely landing onto Beats by Drake as he was porting away, and Rich Girl. I think that they kind of threw Rich Girl off with the strategy change a little bit. He wasn't able to sprint in and get as many stuns on the grips like we were saying before. So they just dismantled Hands Up strategy, and it paid off.
Yep, definitely. So we do have the map selection at this point, which will be Dalaran Sewers, which I think is a great choice for Black Jeff's team.
Yep,
just being able to stay closer. That it's just a much smaller map, much more confined spaces. It means that Black Jeff is going to be able to stick to people much more and get out of line of sight to heal up with his team much more regularly. And the fact that they were able to do that so effectively on Tolvaron of all maps, which is so wide open, he would have to run all the way over and then all the way back. It's a much smaller run on Dalaran Sewers, so we'll have to see how well they're able to make use of that, as we will be getting into this match here very shortly. The game is loading at this particular moment in time. We do have, it looks like, the same compositions yet again as well. So Black Jeff, Beats by Drake, and Rich Girl for Team Hands Up. And then for Team Tempo Storm, we have Jamili, Lock God TKO, and Elite. And so we're just going to have to see how these two teams match up against each other on this much smaller map.
Yeah, and it looks like we're not going to see too much changes spec-wise out of these. One of the things to note, Black Jeff using that Death Siphon, it's going to be a little self-healing, ranged self-healing too. So you can see while he's kind of kiting back or kiting towards a target, able to use that. So this is... it's definitely going to be an interesting match because of those strat changes from the last one. We're going to see Beats by Drake and Rich Girl playing off of each other, Beats by Drake just playing offensive, and then immediately knowing that he has the safety of being able to swap back and port back to his healer, as immediately we see Dota going out and dropping his port behind the pillar, so it looks like they're going to choose to go here. But look at Black Jeff immediately picking up on that, as he is going to, looks like cooldowns out of immediately from Dota, Lock God TKO, as he is going to put that Dark Soul out, but not a lot of dots out quite yet, which is what we normally need to see. He only has them on Beats by Drake, but that is their target of choice, as he does get down to half already. Jamili playing a little bit offensive right there and able to support the cooldowns from Lock God TKO.
Yeah, and it's important to note also that Black Jeff used his Pillar of Frost, but Beats by Drake still has both of his Dark Souls available. So I think that their plan there was just, let's try and see if we can force out any cooldowns with just Pillar of Frost at the start. So that way, once Beats by Drake actually decides to use his Dark Soul, it's going to be a lot scarier. Black Jeff having to use his AMS there just to keep himself alive for just a second as that Comet Storm did come down. And they've actually, both Black Jeff and Beats by Drake have already used their trinkets as well, their CC break trinkets. And the only real major defensive cooldown out of Elite. Actually, it looks like Jamili's already used his Cold Snap. I must have missed that at some point. Probably one of his famous offensive blocks. But also the Stone Form has come out for Elite. So really neither team actually using too much in the way of cooldown just yet. Just mainly those trinkets out of Team Hands Up.
It looks like lots of CC coming out onto Black Jeff. He hasn't done very much as the pillar does come out now. Let's see if he can make some damage as he does lock that Arcane Tree from Jamili, who was trying to get the Polymorph out and wasn't able to. So that was great because Jamili was pushing up to CC his healer. Elite taking a little bit of damage. The wings coming out of him also. But if you look at the positioning right now, they're really forcing Black Jeff and Beats by Drake back.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the situation that that Tempo Storm really needs to stay in, but at the same time, Hands Up has been really, really comfortable with that sort of play style, just pushing out, doing a little bit of damage, pushing back in. They'll go out, they'll attack, they say, we're not going to win right now. Okay, let's go ahead and pull back again. We'll wait until our next opportunity. And now we're starting to see a whole bunch of damage going into Jamili. He actually got caught on the Frostjaw. It looks like Black Jeff was actually able to steal his Frostjaw a second ago, which is just a nice little extra bit of CC to throw at him and keep him from getting away there for just a second, allowing him to put a little bit more damage into him. And now Elite actually down to 40% health. They haven't forced any super important cooldowns out of him just yet. But there he is actually going to have to use the Gateway, which does have a 1 minute cooldown on it now, I believe. It may actually be a little bit longer. I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's good. And Saved by the Light procking there too. I assume he wanted to get out of there before. And Saved by the Light procking off of Dota or Lock God TKO. So those were two important setup that they had to get out of the way. You know, that did cost him his pillar to get those off, but I mean, that was important and that was a good trade. The sack is up on to Dota just for a little bit. Jamili casting some polymorphs out, you know, just doing a bunch of CC right now. Looks like they are trying to stabilize a little bit, but look at how offensive Jamili is playing compared to the rest of his team. Getting feared out and trinketing that too. Black Jeff retreating a little bit. No, choosing to go on to Jamili because he knows he did use that block. Polymorph coming out and it did land on Rich Girl. So they really need to do some damage. You see immediately after knowing that Polymorph landed, using the Icy Veins. They want to try to get some damage out, but it's just Jamili alone as he gets LOS'd over and over and over by Beats by Drake. Beats by Drake just sitting back and LOSing, and what that did was force Jamili out of position a little bit. It pulled Elite off of the pillar. And another stolen polymorph. Wow, that was a great job by Black Jeff. That actually forced the wings out also. And it did proc Saved by the Light. So that was a great exchange by Team Hands Up. They definitely came out on top on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Jamili does now once again have his Cold Snap available. So both ice blocks will be available to him should he be put under some more pressure. But it seems like Elite is kind of the target of choice, at least for Black Jeff at the moment, as he's getting yet another Saved by the Light proc out of him, and it looked like he used, no, excuse me, I just misspoke, but he's actually continuing on to Black Jeff here, or excuse me, continuing on Jamili, and now once again, seems like every time he gets the opportunity to grip Elite out in the open, that's exactly what he's doing, and it's just great play. It puts Elite in a situation where he has to try to run back over here, and of course he can only use his instant cast while he's doing that. Now the Strangulate coming out onto him. Actually, he's not, is he actually not running Strangulate? Was that just, I'm not actually sure. I'm going to check his talents really quick.
Yeah, so Jamili right now looks like he wants to stay offensive, but Beats by Drake is going to be the person they need to kill. Black Jeff is just a little bit too durable this early into the match with the AMS against this double caster. And again, another Grip Hodge coming out with the double Shadow Fury. That was a great job as Elite is going to try to freedom and sprint away with doing a great job. There we go, which leaves Black Jeff in the back, but he is immediately on to Jamili's back right now. Got him down to half with that pillar. That was a great job from Team Hands Up yet again. I think that they're coming out on top out of all these little exchanges.
Yeah, definitely. This match is already kind of starting to look like both of the previous matches. Of course, Team Tempo Storm did manage to come back from this situation in the last match, but it was by the skin of their teeth, actually sacrificing Jamili to be able to do that.
Another stolen polymorph, but Jamili immediately gets out of that due to damage as the Frostbolts are coming out. One of the things to note is Beats by Drake actually put himself offensive position so he could jump off the edge during that CC chain onto Rich Girl. So again, great job by Hands Up. Jamili at about 75% health right now with that Strangulate on to Elite. Elite was looking to play a little bit offensive there, let his team push up a bit, but again, was immediately silenced when he tried to do it.
Yep, definitely. So now we are seeing Black Jeff just able to wander around out here in the open. He is going to get feared there very shortly, but that will be dispelled. He's just sort of walking around out here in the open, taking a little bit of damage from Jamili right now, but just continually pulling Elite out here. Elite with that Fist of Justice now onto him as well. The Comet Storm comes out, but it goes directly into that anti-magic shell, only further fueling Black Jeff's ability to put out damage. Fortunately, he does get slowed down there by that Fist of Justice, but now actually coming over and starting to put a little bit of damage into Lockgod here, as Lockgod has now used his Dark Soul. Black Jeff did have his Pillar of Frost active there for just a second, and now swapping around onto Jamili. Just these constant swaps back and forth, forcing Elite to just continually try to keep his entire team alive, and that's really that spread pressure that's doing them so well in all of these matches.
So Lockgod with his Human Soul right there, plus Jamili with the Icy Veins. They weren't able to get too much damage out of Beats by Drake there, but it was a great attempt. Elite again gripped by himself right now and got stunned again. So we're seeing that over and over and over and over as Lockgod TKO trying to stay a little bit offensive, but Saved by the Light procs as we see the Soul Reaper even coming out. Black Jeff just thinking that he may be able to squeeze off that execute at the end of it, but Lockgod was able to be healed up to full as a sack comes out on to Jamili right there. As looks like Elite keeping his team up with the wings again, but in terms of cooldown usage, it's about even. Both the DPS on the team of Tempo Storm have used their trinkets, but they mostly use that to stay offensive. So it isn't a big defensive advantage at this point for Team Hands Up.
Yeah, and actually Beats by Drake just used his trinket as well to try and stay offensive there. So they're actually Tempo Storm will have both of their DPS trinkets available sooner at this point, which will put them in a little bit better position to maybe try and get a little bit more aggressive here. They've been trying it on a few occasions, and they kind of have to on this map because those distances are so short. But it's just not working out super well for them just yet. There's a triple Shadow Fury, though, onto Team Hands Up. Beats by Drake possibly in a little bit of trouble here. He is going to get that execution sentence to help him heal up and be totally fine as a result of that. Black Jeff now taking some damage, going to go ahead and use his anti-magic shell and then go right into Elite there for just a second with that grip, but gets feared away. And Tempo Storm actually doing a really good job of sort of diffusing these offensive pushes from Team Hands Up, but they're getting so low on health at this point. We are now 20% into dampening, 21% into dampening, and all three members of Team Tempo Storm sitting at relatively low health at the moment.
As we see wings come out from Elite again, he really needs to keep both Lockgod and Jamili offensive because another Save by the Light proc just happened from Jamili. So, there we go. They're going to force the block out of that. Elite getting gripped in and stunned again as Jamili... That block fades as he gets his pet back up. We see some little bit of cooldowns coming out of Jamili trying to do some damage to Beats by Drake as immediately, like we said, every single time, Beats by Drake is going to port back to the safety of his healer over and over. The fear fades onto Rich Girl. Beats by Drake did have that Save by the Light proc. So he is going to be healed up a little bit, but actually they're doing a great job of CCing another fear on to Rich Girl, but not having to use any CC breaks such as Bubble or Trinket in that exchange. So it's looking good again for Team Hands Up. That was a good offensive push from Tempo Storm, but they really weren't able to pull much out of that.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to say, though, that they were able to, Team Tempo Storm was able to sort of make Hands Up back off for just a minute, which has given Elite some time to actually start to top his team back off again and put them in a little bit better of a situation. He does, once again, have his Bubble available and his Stone Form, and he will have his Trinket here very, very shortly, as well as his Avenging Wrath. So lots of cooldowns about to come up.
Jamili blinks in, and it looks like Icy Veins also did get the deep off, but they did a great job of stopping that Polymorph coming out. That's really important for his team to do, because look at this. They're now backing off immediately that CC chain didn't work out for Jamili's team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's sort of what we're going to see them continue to try here. Of course, Elite now having to use that Avenging Wrath to keep his team alive will sort of limit their ability to continue being this aggressive because they're actually having to sort of play a little bit more defensive at the moment. And Hands Up recognizes that, okay, all we've got to do right now is just stay over here by these bunch of boxes. Black Jeff trying to actually get over there as well just to make sure. Let's just stay alive for a little bit longer. Let's not let the super aggressive play from Tempo Storm kill one of us again so we can take this match all the way. We did have a triple Shadow Fury out of, I believe, just a second ago onto Team Hands Up, which gave them a little bit of opportunity for Team Tempo Storm to move in there. But now Jamili taking a little bit of damage here, down to 40% health. The Comet Storm comes out onto Black Jeff, but Black Jeff is still looking pretty fine. Jamili has that Saved by the Light proc down to 25% health. Elite, in the process of all this, is still just taking so much damage from the constant spread pressure, and Jamili does have to Ice Block, and that is his last Ice Block for another 45 seconds before his Cold Snap comes up. Elite might be in some trouble, though. He's going to get gripped in there. He's going to have to use his Hand of Freedom to get back out, and now Jamili, once again, the target of choice. He does not have another Ice Block for 30 seconds. If they can score a kill right now, that would be absolutely huge, but the Blessing of Protection comes out. Jamili should be fine for just now, and Black Jeff just continually trying to put out as much. He was able to purge off the Blessing of Protection, but will they be able to keep up the damage? No, it looks like Black Jeff is going to pull back yet again, and Team Hands Up is going to focus on healing back up to full and then going in for another offensive push, which they're doing right now, pulling out Elite. The Hand of Freedom comes out. Can Elite get away in time? Yes, in fact, he can, but are they just going to turn this back around onto Jamili or someone else? The Shadow Fury comes out onto Elite. He has to use both Bubble and Avenging Wrath, trying to keep his team alive. They're forcing so many cooldowns out of Elite right now, and I don't think Tempo Storm can hold on for too much longer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great job of Tempo Storm pushing up, got Bubble and Wings out of Rich Girl, but also forcing Elite with almost no cooldowns, having to Bubble and Avenging Wrath. You know, just that Pillar of Frost was the only thing that was out there. Beats by Drake, again, is going to be the target. I did like that Tempo Storm swapped it up and did try to go on to Jeff, but it's not really paying off in the long run as they're going back up. Elite actually getting some drinks off, which is good. You know, knowing that this is going to be a long match, and look at the mana difference between the two Paladins.
Yeah, definitely. Rich Girl has spent pretty much his entire mana pool at this point, which could be a notch in Tempo Storm's favor. It means that Hands Up needs to start getting a lot more aggressive here very shortly. Either that or they're going to have to go full on defensive and wait for Rich Girl to get some mana back. He does manage to get a little bit there, and now with that execution sentence onto Black Jeff, his team is fine in terms of survivability at the moment, but are they going to be able to actually get a kill off of this? Just continually, Black Jeff trying to put damage into everything that he can, but he might be in some trouble here. 20% health. Rich Girl into that polymorph. Is Black Jeff going to be able to stay alive? A full fear onto Rich Girl. He cannot trinket it. Black Jeff has his AMS active as Rich Girl's fear falls off, and Rich Girl into that second fear. Black Jeff jumping down, just trying to get out of line of sight for just a second. Frostjaw onto Rich Girl. I don't know how Black Jeff is still alive, but now with that Avenging Wrath active, Black Jeff is going to get a couple of heals there, and now they're going to try and turn this back around, but no, Black Jeff still just under so much pressure. Rich Girl now finally getting the healing out that he needs to allow Black Jeff to turn this back around, and Jamili has to get out of there. He's under so much pressure. He manages to get a sheep off onto Beats by Drake, but he has to use the ice block. Yeah,
Elite right there didn't use too much rate. He actually, no, his cooldowns are almost gone at that point. As Lockout down to half, Jamili down to half, Black Jeff going onto that target. It was smart. He got a lot out of that. As Rich Girl getting feared off. The CC chain was great by Tempo Storm. It just wasn't enough to score the kill onto Black Jeff.
Yeah, definitely. He survived for so long with no heals whatsoever, and now Jamili is on his last legs here, down to 20% health, 10% health. Black Jeff gets into a polymorph. He trinketed immediately before that, so he will not be able to keep up the pressure, giving Elite a little bit of time, but he's stunned. He's not able to actually get any healing out for just a second. Will they be able to keep this up, though? Now Lockgod is in a lot of trouble. This entire team is getting so low on health, and Hands Up is in such a great position, and now the Pillar of Frost is coming out from Black Jeff, and that's going to finish off Elite.
Wow. That was a great match.
Yeah.
Whew. Wow.
Absolutely.
That was, I mean, back and forth. I really liked the trades that happened in there, but Black Jeff, just this map was a great pick by them. It really was.
Yeah.
You could see that they had their choice of positioning almost the entire map, especially with the constant threat of the waterfall coming down. Black Jeff could play that midfield grip in whenever they needed to. The grip stuns on Elite were great. Rich Girl was able to sit in the back a lot, and they really had to commit to getting any CC onto Rich Girl.
Yeah, definitely. And that was ultimately, I think, what sort of spelled their end in that matchup, because they had to get so aggressive and just abusing every single opportunity that they could, so that once it got into that super, super late game, there just wasn't anything left for Tempo Storm to be able to do. And that was what eventually secured Team Hands Up the kill there. So congratulations to Team Hands Up. That's some extremely well-played matches, and that will put them up 2-1 over Team Tempo Storm and allow them to advance along in the brackets to face off against Team Luminosity in the round of 4.
Yeah, exciting matches so far, and of course that was our round of 8, so now we're going to move on to the round of 4, which means these are going to be best of 5s.
Yeah, so we have a lot more awesome games. Excuse me, wow. We have a lot more awesome voice cracks and games on the way for you guys, and we will be getting into those matches very, very shortly after this short break.